What up, Internet? It's the Notorious B.I.V. here. What up? We gotta talk Wandavision Episode 5 because, there's a lot of good stuff in Episode 5. Honestly, though, first of all, will someone please tell me what the hell Wanda's actual powers are? Because they're just like, I mean, so in the movies, like Age of Ultron and stuff, we've seen like she had kind of like telekinetic abilities, right? Um, and in Age of Ultron, she messed with Tony's mind a little bit that one time and made him see weird things. And she made the Hulk go berserk, right? She made Banner go berserk. But I mean, I don't know how much you have to push the Hulk actually to like go berserk though, right? You know what I mean? So now, she goes from that to mind controlling an entire town of people, right? Like that's just like way beyond what, at least what we've known of her powers to be, right? So that's interesting, and now, I mean, now like her now she just seems to have magic power. She just does whatever like she wants. You know what I mean? It's kind of like beyond telekinesis. It's like she's just like boom, boom, boom. You know? So I don't know. It's weird. So maybe there's an explanation for that. I hope they're not just like winging it on that. There as you saw in the last video I did. You know, there are a lot of things that I really hope they explain, because if they don't, they're just gonna bug the crap out of me. But anyway, I hope there's a reason for things, is what I'm saying. Like an actual concrete reason. So first of all, in the episode, we get, I guess the first deal is like they're in their little house hanging out with the kids, trying to get the babies to go to sleep or whatever, and Agnes comes over, right? And there's this weird little part where like Agnes, like she kind of she kind of like, it's like she flubs a line or something, so to speak. And she turns to Wanda and she's like, "Oh, do you want me to do that again? Should we take it from the top?" kind of a thing, like, you know, and like she like it's like she's breaking out of her character at that point, and like, "Oh, should we take that from the top?" And I'm like, so that's interesting. So like Agnes is Agnes in that moment, like she shows that like she's conscious of what's going on, right? As opposed to like a lot of the other townspeople that we see later, who are just like being basically mind controlled, right? So Agnes doesn't seem to be being mind controlled by Wanda. So that's interesting. And of course, you know, I think a lot of people already knew that Agnes is like, you know, she's not a run of the mill character. She's someone more significant, right? She's a character from the comics, I think, or based on a character from the comics anyway. If you guys have read the comics, but that's all I'll say right now. But obviously from that scene, like she's aware. She's like, I guess, a willing participant, maybe. So it'll be interesting to see like what her role is in all of this. But so then Vision like kind of, he's like, what was that all about, you know? And Wanda's like, "Oh, it's nothing, no big deal, whatever." And you see like, so Vision's starting to get like wise to things, right? And again, well, we'll get into that in a little bit. So immediately after that, though, the two twin babies, all of a sudden like age themselves up, right? What happened? I guess they were like Vision and Wanda are like, "Wait, what is that? Like, I hear silence," right? Because the babies were crying or whatever. And they turn around and the two kids are like toddlers now, right? And they're like, "Oh, you know," And the interesting thing about that, though, is that Wanda didn't do that. Like the twins, either like I assume the twins did it to themselves. Like they have this power to like grow up, I guess, really fast, which is weird. But they do. They have this ability. Um, and in the comic books, like I said, Wanda and Vision do have like twin boys in the comic books, and one of them in the comic books they're superheroes, and one of them has Wanda's like magic powers or whatever. That's Wiccan, and the other one I think is named Speed. I could be wrong, but he's a speedster like Pietro was. Um, but so far that they're not exhibiting like any of those powers yet, but they do have this weird power to like change their age, right? Which is weird. But it's also interesting though. That's something that Wanda's not. That's another thing Wanda's not controlling, right? Like the twins are actually controlling themselves to some extent, right? They have that ability, and I imagine that again that she's not controlling their minds either. Like they're just like they're free willed, kind of like Agnes is, right? And Vision for that matter. And we'll talk. And so again, going back to Vision, he goes to his office one day and he's and he like he starts figuring some stuff out, right? And he's starting to get suspicious. And again, I think that's weird because hopefully they'll explain what the deal is with Vision, right? Because we know he was dead. We saw in episode 4 that he's a corpse, basically, right? Like he was a corpse for a second when she looked at him, and then she like, she goes blah, 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 and looks at him again, and he's fine, right? But shakes herself out of it or whatever. But so he's a corpse, and we saw in this episode too that she went to some facility. They had some camera footage of her going to some facility and getting his body, basically, right, from a sword facility, I think he was at. And so we know he's dead. So again, has Scarlet Witch brought him back from the dead and given him his free will? Like I don't know. I don't know. That's a big question in my mind. Like why does Vision have free will if he's dead? I mean, not only is he dead, but like the soul stone that was in his forehead like got ripped out of his forehead. I mean, he's just like I don't know that you could even put him back together without that. So again, I don't know how he's functioning without that aspect. I don't know how Scarlet Witch has brought him back. I assumed that he was kind of a puppet like everyone else, but he's not. Which means he has free will. He can think for himself, and it means he's alive in some way, right? He's like she's not just animating his corpse and like, you know what I mean? So again, I wonder how that's possible because another thing in this episode, a little later, that we find out is that Wanda cannot affect. She can't cheat death, right? She can't like create life. She can't bring back the dead, and it's established very concretely in this. In episode 5, when she has when the kid's dog dies. Her twin's dog dies, and they're all sad about it. And again, they're gonna they have the ability to age up because they're sad about their dog dying. They look at each other for a second, like, hey, let's just grow up. Let's just age up so we don't have to deal with this, right? And Scarlet Witch is like, no, don't grow up, don't do that. You have to deal with these feelings, blah blah blah, and all this stuff. So we know that they have that ability. But again, that scene emphasizes very like very strongly that she doesn't have the power to bring back the dead. She can't do it. Okay, so that's another interesting thing. So if she can't bring back the dead, like, how did she bring back Vision, right? Is that a different case because he's a machine and maybe she can do something there? I don't know. I hope we find out. I'm sure we will. Anyway, that's a big question I have from episode 5. But what else does she do? So there's this interesting part where they send in a drone, and again, this gets back to like the literalness of the TV world that it's still bugging me. It's still really bugging me. Like I'm okay with television sitcoms as a metaphor, but not as a literal thing. And it's become this literal thing. Like they're literal, like Scarlet Witch, or rather, the TV world that she's living in is literally being broadcast as a show, as a sitcom, which is weird. Anyway, but another sort of literal thing here, where Jimmy and what's her name? The people on the outside, Monica, Rambo, Jimmy, and Darcy, right? They figure out that, hey, let's try sending in, since the sitcoms are in like the 80s, right, set in the 80s right now, like we're in 80s mode or whatever, let's send in an 80s drone, and like that might get past the security or whatever, or that might like get past Wanda's little, protections or whatever. And so they do that. So they send in this 80s drone, which, again, like this 80s drone is like way sleeker and cooler looking than that stupid sword drone that Monica sent in there in like episode 3, I think it was. That was like the most horrible drone. I looked at that thing. I'm like, it looks like a friggin', like some kid made a friggin' drone in Metal Shop or something, or not a drone, like some kid made a helicopter in Metal Shop, or something like that. Like, it was so stupid looking. Anyway, the 80s drone looks like way better than that for some reason. And so they send in this 80s drone and it works, right? And again, it's like, why the literalness of the TV thing is just weird to me. Like, why would that work? Why are they literally in the 80s, and like literally 80s stuff like gets through the barrier or whatever, like that's still really bugging me. And again, if they explain it in a decent manner, I will be forgiven. But if they don't, I'm just gonna be like, ugh, it's so lame. Anyway, yeah, it bugs me. It's really bugging me. Anyway, so they send this drone in, right? And she sees it, and she blasts out of the air, presumably. She actually comes out of the force field, right? And all the Monica's there, and director what's his face, and like a bunch of sword agents with rifles are trained on her, right? And she comes out of the TV world or whatever, dragging this drone. She's like, "Hey, does this belong to you?" Chucks it at him or whatever. And again, this part was weird to me because she literally says, "Hey, I just want to be left alone. Just leave me alone. Like, I just want to be alone in my little La La Land. So so don't screw with me." And she leaves, right? She goes back in to TV land. And that was weird to me because if she seriously wants to be left alone, why is she broadcasting? Why is she literally broadcasting this show out to the outside world where they're gonna see it, right? Where they picked it up, and you know what I mean? Like, that just seems weird to me. Like, if she wants to be left alone in this fantasy land, then why is she broadcasting to the outside world? Now, maybe she's not doing the broadcasting. Maybe, right? Maybe that's an explanation. Maybe someone else, maybe someone else is broadcasting her little life going on in here. That's a possibility. But if that's the case, why is she like like she does the little rewind thing and all that stuff every now and then, right? And we've seen how she manipulates the broadcast, like when she was when she shot Monica, when she blasted Monica out of the realm, right? She just like when they were watching that they were watching the TV program. Then Monica or Wanda, like, she fast forwarded that part, and like she's just like, what? Why did you say that, right? And then all of a sudden it just goes beep to the credits, right? And it's like, so she's obviously manipulating it. So I would assume that she's broadcasting it, but that doesn't make any sense. Like, why is she broadcasting it? Again, the only explanation I can think of is like that's her subconscious, like asking for help or something, right? Like she's subconsciously projecting this out there. That's like the part of her that, that's still sane, I guess. That's like, hey, you guys, I'm trapped in this weird world that I made for myself. Help me, right? Like a desperate cry for help from her subconscious, maybe, right? That's the only explanation I can think of. We'll see what they do with that. Anyway, so towards the end of so we got to talk about the ending, because the ending was pretty dang good. Yeah, my shirt, by the way, this is what it says. It's kind of retarded. I don't really like it. It's a present I got for Christmas, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, cool. Anyway, I'm not trying to make a statement or anything. I don't think this is all that funny, but it is what it is. I'm wearing it. It's clothing. Anyway, so the ending. So Vision actually confronts Wanda, right? And he's like, hey, what the crap's going on? And she's like, I don't know, Vision. I don't want to talk about it. And suddenly at that point, like, the doorbell rings, and Vision's like, and this is interesting. So Wanda says, "Oh, you probably think I'm doing that, just to like get out of this situation or whatever, like to not have this conversation." And then the doorbell rings again, and so she goes to the door, and she opens the door, and we see the back of the dude's head, and it's Pietro. So the back of his head looks exactly like Aaron Taylor Johnson's Pietro from Age of Ultron, right? It's got the like dark underneath with the bleach blonde over that, right? Like that dude that he had in Age of Ultron. But then when we come around, we see the front of him, and it's friggin' what's his name? Oh, now I can't think of his name. It's the Pietro. It's the version of Pietro from the X-Men films, right? Evan Peters, that's his name. So it's Evan Peters who was Pietro in the X-Men movies. So now the X-Men movies were, or rather, like about the same time that Age of Ultron was released. The Fox released, I believe it was Days of Future Past, where Evan Peters was introduced as Pietro. So you had two Pietros in the movies. You had the Marvel version in Age of Ultron, who was Aaron Taylor Johnson, and then you had the Evan Peters version, who was in the Fox X-Men movies. And for whatever reason, Marvel just killed off Aaron Taylor Johnson, which was kind of weird. I don't know if they didn't like having two versions of the same character, like if they didn't want to like compete with Fox. I don't know what the deal was there, but they got rid of Aaron Taylor Johnson, as we know. They introduced him in the movie and then killed him off at the end. And then Evan Peters was in a couple more X-Men movies, I think, maybe just one more. Well, no, he's been in a couple. Um, so so for those of you that don't know, though, like Marvel lost Marvel. The X-Men is a Marvel creation. Okay, they were a Marvel comic book, but Marvel sold those rights off a long time ago, and Fox had the rights for a long time, and so Fox Studios was making the X-Men movies, and then just recently Marvel, or rather Disney, who owns Marvel, purchased Fox, and so now Marvel has the rights to the X-Men back again, and a lot of people are saying, are thinking that this movie is going to somehow lead to the X-Men coming into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is possible, and especially, I guess this Pietro appearance sort of lends some credence to that, but I honestly I don't know, none of this has seemed really very X-Men-y to me, right? None of the episodes 1 through 5, none of them have really hinted like at any kind of mutant X-Men type stuff going on. So I kind of doubt that that this is going to lead that the WandaVision series is going to lead directly to like the X-Men being introduced. I don't think that's really going to be the case. It might be like a starting point to where they could bring them in at some future time. But I don't think this series is necessarily going there. But again, Evan Peters, so he has the Aaron Taylor Johnson hair, right? But he's obviously so the question is like, is he some kind of amalgam of the two Pietros from those two universes, or is he literally like the Quicksilver from the X-Men universe that's like been pulled over here somehow? Like maybe Wanda's inadvertently ripped a hole in the timeline or something and pulled him out into here. I don't think that's necessarily the case. He seems to be, again, he seems to be conscious, right? He seems to know why he's there, and he knows. And Wanda was really surprised. She's like, "Oh, Pietro! Like, oh my gosh, is it you?" And like she seemed genuinely surprised. Like this was another thing that's outside her control. Like she didn't do this, right? She didn't bring him here. Like he came, and so that's an interesting. I guess that was the cliffhanger of the show, right? Obviously, and it was a cool one. It was really cool. It just has me wondering, like, I mean, like I said, it could mean a lot of different things. I mean, like I said, I honestly don't think they're going to usher in the X-Men at the end of WandaVision. It may lead to that at some point, like in Doctor Strange 2, which like WandaVision is kind of leading into Doctor Strange 2. So maybe at the end of Doctor Strange 2 it could lead to that. I don't know. The thing, I guess a lot of people, WandaVision is based on the comic book, is based largely on a comic book called House of M, in which, in the comic books, Wanda and Pietro were mutants. Okay, they were actually the son and daughter of Magneto, who's like the evil, X-Men nemesis or whatever, and he's a mutant. And they were mutants, and they were in his like Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, I think, when they were introduced, and they fought the X-Men, and then they kind of turned it around. They kind of decided, oh, we want to be good guys now. So Wanda, well, I don't know. Pietro's always just been kind of a dick, like in the comics. He's kind of been like an anti-hero, kind of, sometimes he's on the side of the heroes, and sometimes he's being a dick to the heroes, and it's just, he's kind of like in a gray area, I guess. But Wanda like became, a hero, obviously. She kind of went over to the Avengers and kind of became popular there as an Avengers character, which is why you have the Vision and her getting together, because he was in the Avengers as well. That whole romance happened there. So she became popular in the Avengers and kind of less of an X-Men character, but she's still she was still a mutant in the Marvel comics. So obviously, when they introduced her and Pietro into the Marvel universe, they didn't have the rights to mutants and X-Men and all that stuff. So they gave the two of them a little bit of a different backstory. So now, again, in this series, they haven't referred. She hasn't referred to herself as a mutant or anything like that. I mean, there haven't been any references to mutants. So I really doubt that it's leading there. But the Evan Peters thing, definitely threw me for a loop. I was like, okay, what does this mean? It could very well be leading to that. I don't know. Anyway, so the last thing I wanted to touch on, I forgot to touch on this in my other video, and this is going long, and I apologize, but the whole hex thing, like the hexagon shape, they keep hammering that. They keep saying, why is it a hexagon? And oh look, it's hexagon shaped and all this stuff, right? I believe that that's just a subtle comic book reference, because in the comics, she refers to her powers as hex powers, and she shoots hex bolts at people. She's like, hex bolts, hex bolts. So that's in the comics. She refers to her powers as hex powers. So I think that's just like a subtle reference to the comics. However, they keep hammering it so hard that I wonder if there is some significance to the hex shape that we're going to find out later in the when things come, later in the series. We'll see. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that in there. But that's episode 5. I'm excited for episode 6. I know you are too. And I'll try to do another vid after episode 6, and we can chat about the state of affairs, baby. So thanks for joining me, everybody. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment on the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Yeah.